Surprisingly, Bitcoin has held up relatively well after a danger signal yesterday as the market broke out of $25,000 on a false break and closed underneath that level. However, cryptocurrencies have been getting destroyed, and not in the USD format, but in the Bitcoin pair. Stay tuned. We'll have a look at how that rotation is affecting investors who are dollar cost averaging into altcoins. We're going to look purely at the charts and history from the previous Bitcoin cycle to find out how long altcoin investors may continue getting wrecked, increasing their risk in the market rather than just waiting for some key signals to come up. Also got to update what's happening with the traditional markets as we're finding some really solid support critically above those log downtrends with some volume coming into the market. So we've got a jam-packed one today. There's no time to waste. Like, subscribe, hit that bell notification icon, top of the video description, all those good links that you need for our free trading strategies and free crypto and economic reports. Guys, let's get stuck in with Forex Factory, the announcements that are coming up, the stuff that everyone is waiting for. I'll give you my opinions on what I think is going to happen in the market leading up to some of these major announcements. So at the moment, we don't have too much left after the core CPI data that was out yesterday. There's some employment data that is waiting to come out as well for the Aussies and for the Americans as well. Everything is waiting until next week, Wednesday, Thursday, when we have the FOMC meetings. Everyone's holding on for that. But I'm here to tell you what the market is actually doing right now and then give you my opinion in terms of the analysis of what I think will happen leading up to that event. And this is going to be different to the vast majority of people. You guys that have been following for some time probably know that by now. And so far, it's been dead on point. Thank you very much to the 18.6 year cycle that is giving us the crystal ball to the future. So looking here at October 2022, so far that key significant low, big day that pushed from the low, dead on that 50% level, pushed high, nice high close, nice high volume. You can see that in the background here with the gray. Markets up, turned around, big bearishness coming out right here with the low. We've been covering this for some time, and now we're sitting just slightly higher than that previous low. In any case, the market just needs to hold up above this low here. This is the key low that is pivoting everything right now. And like we looked at yesterday, a fair bit of volume has come into the traditional markets, and that looks like we are forming another low. Now, this log downtrend going from the all-time high to one of the key pivot points in the market on the way down, which was that August top. Now it's anchored directly to those high prices of the days. It's not just a random line drawn, it's anchored key to those key levels on those high prices. As this line falls to the downside, that's our logarithmic downtrend here. You can see just in the last 24 hours, the last trading session for the S&P 500 closed just above that level. We've had a fair bit of volume on the 13th of March. That was that fearful day after all the banks collapsed on the weekend, and then the government came to the rescue of the market. We had pretty big volume on the Tuesday as the market ran up, and then just in the last 24 hours, again, reasonably high volume when you compare it to anything that has happened in the last couple of months. You'd have to go all the way back to that October low to get anything as significant as this volume in the market. And then we had a higher close. So this is all looking relatively good for a low to be forming. What we don't want to see is obviously the breakdown of these levels now with that increased volume. You can see on each of these other lows, there's been quite significant volume. You can see in September, there was very high volume, a slight break, and then a quick bounce out of that low. That could be an option right now. You can see back in June, another low that we're looking at, pretty significant volume when you look at it compared to the entire market onwards and backwards from that point. The market bounced out of that low as well, and then the next low wasn't that much lower either. The other piece to look at here is the VIX. So it looks like we're putting in a higher swing bottom on the daily. On the VIX, which is a volatility index, it looks like we're putting in a lower swing top, which means we may see volatility drop off again, which typically means that we're going to see the S&P 500 increase again. As you can see here, this is basically called it almost every single time. Make sure you are tuned into the channel, subscribe, and I'll go through another full video on the VIX and the S&P, bringing that up to date, looking at those highs and low prices throughout history as well. So onto the S&P, you can see here we are potentially putting in a higher low just on the daily. So a very small indicator here. Should we be able to break through these tops here at around 39.80, it's going to be some good move to the upside just in the short term. So all of these little cogs have to come together. This is looking relatively good for the S&P leading into those news announcements like we just saw next week. There's about 5 trading days left, so I wouldn't be surprised to see indecision right now as the market is waiting for some more news events to come out. However, it looks like some of the players are making their move at the moment. But of course, until some of these news decisions come out, typically we see some indecision in the market across the board. That is the same thing that's happening for BTC at the moment. We had that big blow off top here yesterday on Tuesday, and then just in the last 24 hours, we've had a slight push to the upside to 25,289 and then a lower close. We know the lower closes aren't a good thing, which is why I put up that video yesterday looking at this being a potential warning, flashing danger signals in this time, really just so that we don't get caught up trying to keep buying tops and to be prepared in case there is some downside, because it is going to get extreme on the emotions and in the news again should we see some of that downside. That's the reason for the warning, because typically a lot of people don't check charts. I'm not saying you guys, but a lot of the time out there, it's not a thing to look at a chart and look at a price. You get swept up on the emotion of what's going on in the news and the media saying this is going to get worse. But when you zoom out again, you've got higher lows forming. This so far is a cycle low. So if I zoom out any further, you're basically starting to see some higher lows forming. Now I've just put on a 50% level for the shorter term. In terms of where we could see this drop back to, our next level is around $23,000. I reckon that's a good place as well because it's in the middle of this indecision, right? The bullish case is to the upside, the bearish case is to the downside. If we break these levels of $21,000 to $20,000, quite bearish, because then the next support level is basically that low there at 19.5. So there's a fair bit going on underneath these levels if the market is to break down. However, right in the middle of this indecision is $23,000. That is on this bar here, so the 13th of March. You can see the volume really did increase on Monday, the 13th of March, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see if the market needs to come back and test somewhere in this price range to ensure that there is strength in those buyers and this just wasn't all a big hype up bubble of the market having to push up higher based on the previous news events. So it wouldn't be surprising if we did see a test in this price range of this bar based on the volume that we saw for that day and how fast and hard it moved up from that point. Overall, if you're not concerned with all of the day-to-day stuff and the emotions of the news and the media and everyone telling us that there's going to be another collapse in the market, then basically what happens in this zone for you is almost irrelevant. You're just waiting to see, does the market find support at these lows at 19, 20, 21, and is it able to hold that support to move higher again? Or are we finding our consolidation at higher prices, which is a good thing, especially if we're consolidating at the upper end of the 50% range. So we're above the 50% here. Are we consolidating here in order to push higher above? That's all you're basically waiting for now. In between this could get very emotional, as typically happens in the market with the doomsday items of banks collapsing and whatnot coming out. But in terms of the chart, the objectiveness out there, leaving the emotions and the media headlines aside, then nothing really matters until we break out of this one way or the other. Break out past 25,300 or break down past 20,300 or the low here at around $19,500. Typically with the strength in a Bitcoin move, we start to see a push in altcoins. And then eventually these altcoins cannot hold their ground against their Bitcoin value, which is exactly what we're seeing right now in the dominance and a pretty solid collapse in altcoins. But before we get to that, a quick word from our channel sponsor, New Brighton Capital. For our Aussie viewers, if you already control your own super or have already made the decision to set up an SMSF, New Brighton Capital specialize in crypto accounting accounting for self-managed super funds. Check out the link in the description where you can book in your free 20-minute consult, and be sure to use promo code Pizzino for a $200 credit off your SMSF accounting fees. Over to CoinMarketCap to have a look at the bleed of altcoins. Now we're looking at the 24-hour because over the last hour or so, they've just started to rebound. We're at 0% or 0.5, but over the last 24 hours, you can see a few of these are starting to hit high single digits. Some have even crossed the mark and gone over to double digits here, like in the case of Filecoin at 17%, Lido 17%. These are on the verge of double digits here. HBAR, NIA, VET, you can basically go down this list here. Phantom, 13% down. This is all against their BTC value, remember. If Bitcoin's going up, then their USD value will also go up with it, but at what rate? At the moment, what looks like is happening is our rotation. Now, I'm not saying we're going into an altcoin season at this stage, but it's an interesting metric to have a look at here, or a graph to have a look at in terms of where the money flows. And we can back this up with historical data over a macro scale here for altcoins during Bitcoin seasons from lows to highs. And at this stage, we saw a lot of money flow into Bitcoin. We saw Ethereum pump, saw some of the large caps pump. Now we saw the altcoins. Everything else started to take off. That's over the last week or so. Pretty big moves to the upside. Then how it all sells, how it all comes out is you'll start to see a sell-off of the alts, money potentially going back into Bitcoin or into stable coins. And then we start to see a bit of a sell-off from Bitcoin and stable coins, maybe out into fiat, to protect some of those profits. I know we might be crypto maxis here, whatever you might be, but the fact of the matter is not everyone is, and they're still going to be taking some profits into fiat. So it typically goes through a cycle like this, basically a rotation from the safer assets. They may have peaked, the money flows into the altcoins for a bit more degenning, higher risk, which is why I always talk about not to be investing in altcoins until there are some key breakout levels. This is the long-term stuff, different to trading. I got to remind some people of that. But then when we go to take profits, sometimes you take profits from altcoins into Bitcoin and stables. I personally like to keep some in Bitcoin and in stables and take some into fiat as well, so I can actually go and use some of those profits. And that's what it looks like is happening right now. We see the Bitcoin dominance still increasing, 45.5%. And if I turn on our Investor Accelerator Bitcoin dominance, which removes the stable coins from the dominance chart here, you can see we are now at around 52%, which is the reading here on the right-hand numbers. So 52, and the market you can see here is at around 45%. So this has been an uptrend since May of 2021, basically the first top area for Bitcoin, and you can see the lows have been increasing during this time here. So Bitcoin's really been on a solid run. These are some of the different times in the market that I've labeled here on the chart. We can see we've gone through a market being more in sync here, where it's gone from Bitcoin to alts and many times over to do those altcoin seasons during the top of the bull market, and then during that bear market of 2022, which is basically this zone right here. You can see that Bitcoin took charge, then altcoins took charge, and now Bitcoin's on the charge again. So if that's the case, the long-term investing in altcoins is not performing better than Bitcoin. That's just the data from the chart. Generally speaking, there is going to be the outliers out there as well. But generally speaking, if Bitcoin dominance is on the rise, altcoins are not performing as well as Bitcoin on a whole when you zoom out, probably to a weekly or a monthly chart. Now, this is potentially the bottom here for Bitcoin. So that's the dominance, where the dominance sits right now when Bitcoin price bottomed. And you can see from that point, we started to head up a little faster than what we have done in the past. Now, taking a look back at previous cycles, as I've labeled them all here, the bottom from 2018, there's November. And we had a run up. This is the Bitcoin dominance going up, which means altcoins were bleeding out. Then altcoins took over a little bit, and it was basically a somewhat balanced market from low to low. However, from that point in April when Bitcoin basically broke out to go to close to 14,000, that was a huge charge for Bitcoin dominance, which means there was a bleed out of altcoins, primarily ETH around those periods because ETH is the second largest crypto, which means the dominance has to come from somewhere. But overall, that was where the dominance is coming from and going to, from altcoins into Bitcoin. Bitcoin finds its peak, goes sideways and down because this is September now, and then eventually we had some micro alt pumps and DeFi summer, which led in 2020. So there is a fair period here where Bitcoin does take a lot of the gains away from altcoins. So it's something to pay attention to if you're looking to DCA into altcoins for the longer term. Pay attention to the Bitcoin dominance chart so that hopefully your investment is doing better over the long run than Bitcoin, because otherwise what's the point of taking a higher risk if you could just throw it into Bitcoin and stay safe? Here's a quick look at some of those altcoins which are starting to bleed, and Ethereum looks like it has finally broken that thin ice. We're not there just yet. You can still see there are a few lows here at around 6.5% to 6.7%, but it is definitely on that down move here against its BTC value on a longer term time frame. We saw that with FTM against the Bitcoin pair just in the last 24 hours. Pretty solid move to the downside, 11.5%. Filecoin, I'll go through some of the majors in a sec, but here we go, 15.9%. That's the Filecoin losing value to BTC. Yes, it is up from the lows in December or November, but how long do you intend on holding these altcoins? That's the key question here. If it's a short term, you're making way better money than Bitcoin. If it's longer term, that's yet to be seen. For example, one of the favorites of the noob investor, Link BTC has been crushed over the last few days, going from about 3,000 or probably 30,000 Satoshis down to 26,000 Satoshis. In terms of a percentage move to the downside, that's about a 14% loss against Bitcoin, let alone what it may be against the USD value. And at the moment, it's coming back down to the previous lows in May of 2022 and June 2022. So the next stop is probably somewhere around here in the likes of Link. Some of the other popular cryptos in the top 10 and 20, Matic, also on a down move here as it put in a lower top on the macro scale. You can go to Solana, BTC, which hasn't had a great move overall after getting absolutely hammered from the top. This is also down in the last 24 hours, about 6%, with a lower low here in December from November. So I'd be on the lookout for any sort of hopeful support coming in here. If not, this could continue down. As you can see, this is a pretty long move to the downside against their BTC values. Theta is breaking previous lows in January. So it's breaking down again. This, as you can see, is a typical pattern of an altcoin against its Bitcoin value. And this is what I've been warning about throughout the entire bull market when it comes to altcoins. If you find yourself in this position, it sounds kind of doom and gloom. Come next bull market, try not to hold on to these altcoins throughout the entire season. Majority of these things are just not going to make it. And if you want to keep some profits, get the hell out of altcoins at those periods. Right now, they are bleeding out against Bitcoin, and I'd be watching the lows. Do they break those previous lows? That's a sell signal. If they don't, you do what you need to do with those altcoins. But whatever you got to do, put it in your plans to get out of all altcoins whenever there is a good pump. And come next season, none of these are going to make it to the moon. That's the way I play the game. I've been through 2 cycles now. These altcoins just don't do it. They're hopes and dreams. I hope you can live out your dreams, stay safe in the markets, don't get screwed on these altcoins. They are a load of bullshit. But what isn't bullshit is the profits that they can get you in a very short period of time when there is a mega altcoin season. Remember to take profits and like and subscribe to the channel. Links in the top of the video description. Other videos popping up here for your educational purposes. I'll see you guys at the next one. Until then, peace out.